I mean, it seems to me in a situation, this is what it looked like to me, and I've looked at the tape and I still can't figure it out. Shoot the gun in the air as a warning, tase a person, shoot them in the leg, shoot them in the behind, stop them somehow. But if the only solution is to kill a teenager, there's something wrong with this. There's something very, very wrong.
I don't know if our next guest has a deep understanding of matters tactical. I do know he has a very good taste in cigars. But I'm going to ask him the question anyway. He is the senior fellow for the National Center for Public Policy Research, also with Project 21. Horace Cooper, can I ask you, what do you think would have happened to that other young black girl who was just about to be stabbed if the police officer had just, I don't know, shot his gun in the air?
So apparently, if you frighten people with a discharge of a firearm, those who are in the process of committing felonious acts will be startled and they'll stop. I don't know where this class was taught, because that's actually the opposite of what ends up happening. The reason that you actually have to shoot to kill is you have to shoot to stop. When I used to teach my class, I would explain something about
what class? What class? Tell our listeners. We need to know what was Horace teaching.
So I taught legislative process, constitutional law, and the modern Supreme Court confirmation process. And in my legislative process, I taught all about how legislatures make rules and what the impact of these rules might be. And I said, so for instance, what if you decided that you were concerned about the violence that occurs when banks are being robbed? If you make it unlawful to discharge your weapon to protect a bank from being robbed, guess what? You'll likely limit the number of shootings that occur when the bank is being robbed. Meanwhile, the number of bank robbings is likely to just skyrocket
Explode.
and escalate.
Right.
But you could at least limit the number of firearm discharges. When I just heard that segment, I was reminded of this. You can, in fact, minimize the likelihood that an officer is going to shoot a felon. What you will get in exchange is the successful completion of felonious acts. And if those lead to death, well, that's going to be sort of the cost of doing business.
So
this is remarkable.
Here's the left-wing math. Less cops using guns, more people being murdered. Thank you for that translation. That is an eminently clarifying moment. But I have to ask you, there's this, I don't know, civil rights icon who is famous for climbing a flagpole in the Carolinas called Bree Newsom. And she said this, and I just, she's black, so maybe that gives her authority to say this. Teenagers have been fighting, including with knives, for eons. We don't need police to address that situation. Horace.
I wanted to laugh again if it weren't so sad and pitiful. In other words, let them work it out. Just let them fight. They're using knives. Oh, they stab each other. They kill each other. They seriously wound one another. Let them work it out. That's far better than actually telling the one who's doing the attacking that they can't.
So is this potentially the real definition of equity, Horace?
Well, I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks left Alabama, a civil rights icon. Nothing that happened to her compared to what would ultimately happen when she moved to Michigan. The Klan, the Democrats who were in elected office, the governor, none of the people did anything to her the same way that hoodlums who broke into her house late when she was in her 70s and beat her to the point of putting her in a hospital. This is what we're saying.
Yeah.
We're saying it is better for those hoodlums to feel free from any constraints whatsoever. No risk that they might be shot. No risk that they might be injured. And, of course, by the way, when we stop threatening to injure them when they carry out the act in flagrante, we're now going to move to the conversation about, well, why are we punishing them afterwards?
We're going to talk about that momentarily, but we do love the fact that he must be a former professor of law because he used the word in flagrante. Follow him and his colleagues at Project 21 News, author of How Donald Trump is Making Black America Great Again. Horace Cooper will be with us after these messages.
This work is long overdue. America has a long history of systemic racism. Black Americans, and black men in particular, have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human.
Less than human systemic racism. We're going to ask our guest what he thinks about it. But first, a little light entertainment that you should enjoy, that you deserve. Mike Lindell's done it again, executive producer of a new movie. You've got to check it out through SalemNow.com. It's Church People, starring Stephen Baldwin and Thor Ramsey. A comedy, a faith-based comedy about a youth pastor who gets embroiled in a crazy scheme by his church leaders, and he has to save his reputation and get back to the mission of spreading the good word from the good book. Church People, available through our Stream It tonight. Have a break. Enjoy it. It's Mike Lindell. You'll be laughing out loud. SalemNow.com. Church People is the movie, and the promo code for extra discounts, well, you know what it is. It's Gorka, Gorka, SalemNow.com, Church People, promo code Gorka. So I feel so dirty when I do this, Horace. I feel like I'm playing their identity politics, but you've been such a good supporter of the show. You're such a clear thinker and committed to the truth. I'm just going to put it out there. Kamala Harris says we are institutionally racist as a nation. Is that true?
Well, of course it's not true, but guess what it's reminiscent of?
What?
It's reminiscent of what we would have seen in the 1920s, the 1930s, even as late as the 1950s, by many elected officials who were committed to a racially separatist agenda. It was okay and, in fact, encouraged that we speak about certain groups in certain ways. In this case, both Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris have been continually castigating white America and in the process attacking all of America in a way that looks a lot like what we would have seen, as I said, during the Jim Crow era.
And when you have a black sportsman with a net worth of about $250 million post the photograph of the police officer who saved that black girl by shooting the knife-wielding crazy and saying, "You're next, tick-tock, tick-tock." What does that do for race relations, Horace?
Well, absolutely. Again, this is the kind of thing that we saw. There were many, many instances. The Scottsboro Boys is a famous case involving 9 black kids who were falsely charged. But look at all of the elected officials all around who manipulated. I want people to just remember the O.J. Simpson case. What if the governor, a Republican, Pete Wilson, had said when O.J. Simpson was accused and charged with the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman? What if he had said, I am going to see to it that we hold this guy accountable? What if he contacted his attorney general, Dan Lundgren, a Republican, and said, I want you to recruit some of the highest profile law firms that you can, and I want them to donate their legal services. If we're talking $5 million or $10 million, money should be no object. They should all agree. Instead of allowing him to move his trial to Los Angeles, let's force it to be held in Brentwood.
Yeah.
This would have been an astronomical change if the governor and the attorney general all came together with elites, lawyers, and corporations to make sure that this person is convicted. It is dangerous. It is not due process. And if O.J. Simpson, a murderer, gets due process, how about Derek Chauvin, who's actually charged with second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter? The charges against him were equally meritorious of full due process. They should have allowed a venue change. They should never have allowed a settlement. Could you imagine in the middle of the O.J. Simpson trial, we suddenly announce that there's been a settlement or a payment or a judgment in terms of O.J. Simpson's culpability?
For $27 million. Yeah, incredible, which happened just now with Derek Chauvin. Horace, I'm going to ask the tough question. We're talking to Horace of Project 21 and also senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research. Is the community, are the community leaders of Black America doing enough to stop and to face down the neo-segregationists like Kamala and Biden?
So what we're seeing is not what the leaders are doing. What we're seeing is what the rank and file are doing. When we finally unpack the 2020 election, what we're going to see is a record number of Black Americans supported liberty, freedom, and independence, and by doing so, voting for Donald Trump and voting for conservatives in Congress. What we're also seeing is, overwhelmingly, they tell us again and again, Black Americans say we want more law enforcement, not less, and we're seeing Black Americans line up, going to the local gun store and picking up a firearm to protect themselves because they sense that the local governments are not going to do it for them.
But is it enough? Is it enough if the leaders aren't doing it, just the rank and file, Horace?
Well, I learned this a long time ago. You can try leading all you want. If you can't get the people to follow you, there is no success. You had to cheat in 2020, and if people don't understand that, that's what I was getting at. You had to cheat in 2020, and the reason you had to cheat is if you cannot get 80+% of Black America to support the left has no chance in the national elections.
That's why they had to cheat, and now we can say it because we're not on YouTube. We are a First Amendment friendly platform. It's called rumble.com. If you're not subscribed, do it today. All our segments, amazing guests like Horace Cooper, rumble.com/Seb Gorka, SEBGORKA, as well as our website, sebgorka.com. Rumble.com/Seb Gorka, SEBGORKA, as well as our website, sebgorka.com. Check out his book, How Donald Trump is Making Black America Great Again. Thank you, Horace. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First.